Yuji's getting a huge upgrade for himself as a sorcerer, and Higuruma is going to have his biggest and most important trial to date in the next chapter. I'm going to be predicting and talking about mainly this handicap match that's coming up in the next chapter and what I think is going to happen. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this. It helps out a lot for the both of us. Yuji has clearly gotten an upgrade in the recent chapter 238 JJK with new creature-like arms that have claws and from the looks of it like bladed elbows. Some people have told me that he's possibly biting on his arm in this panel as he's coming down as if he's herring. That's very hard to tell, but we won't really know until the next chapter. There's really only two ways naturally we can guess how Yuji has this new ability. One, a byproduct of Sukuna's dismantling the cleave. We know ever since the very first arc, Yuji was supposed to have at some point in time gained some of Sukuna's curse techniques due to Sukuna residing in Yuji for so long and their curse energy practically bathed together. The only part I think doesn't add up, at least for me, of this being cleave or dismantle is because when Sukuna uses this technique, his fingers never change. If anything, this could be Sukuna's shape-shifting or soul augmentation when he changes the feature of his body rather than an effective cleaving dismantle. The second option, of course, is Yuji using the blood techniques of Choso's brothers that were stored. We know Yuji's willing to eat anything, and Shoko said this boy is like a cursed storage. It would make a lot of sense narratively and power-wise if the boy who could eat a Sukuna finger with no problem could eat the blood vessels of death wound pains and gain their cursed energy and technique. Yuji with dismantling cleave would be pretty ironic as Yuji will be using these techniques for good and slashing and slicing away evil. The technique that garners so much despair throughout the series, seeing Yuji stand at the top as one of the strongest with this ability would be pretty poetic. But I don't think that's the route Gege is trying to go. Chapter 221, we got the two big foreshadowings towards Yuji's power progression and knowledge. The other was the soul book left behind by Yuki. What if this book helps Yuji with augmentating his soul and using the Blood Brothers' blood manipulation, in turn changing the feature of his arm? Actually a little similar to Mahito in fact. Like how Mahito could turn his arms into blades or his feet into horse feet. Of course it wouldn't be to that degree, but with Yuji's insane physicality and durability, this is going to be extremely helpful to beating Sukuna, Urame, and Kenjaku's ass. I would imagine these claws are going to let Yuji scratch and slice at Sukuna, but with it possibly being blood infused at the fingernails. Specifically, these fingernails, he could extend them and it would look like mini piercing bloods, or for a better example, would be something like Grimmjow's Dissegaden, Grimmjow's ultimate move that he used in the third fight with Ichigo. Now, Grimmjow is one of my goats, so I would gladly like to see something like that. Not to mention that if Yuji could activate Florent Red Scale and make himself even more of a tank with his already crazy durability, he would be arguably a monster. He might be on par with like a heavily restricted user in that case. And I am of the camp that with Sukuna having lingering curse energy in Yuji, dismantling cleave might not be as destructive towards Yuji compared to other characters, since Gojo himself stated that the unlimited hollow purple didn't do as much damage to him when he took the attack because it was his own cursed energy. Maybe, just maybe, Yuji, although it would be extremely painful, could reduce some of the damage taken from Sukuna's attacks. Although looking at it now, Yuji kind of tanking a crazy 120% boosted dismantle would, I don't know if that's going to be possible, but it's up in there.
I have reviewed the government's sentencing recommendations.
Now Higuruma is going to be very interesting in this battle with Sukuna, because you would imagine Higuruma has to activate his domain immediately. There's nothing else he can really do. Now I know some people are going to wonder, oh well, why doesn't Sukuna just open his domain like he did with Gojo? Well, non-lethal domains short hits activate faster than most lethal domains because of the nature of the short hit. With Hikari's domain, the short hit of how his domain works is 0.1 seconds, the fastest in the series. Hikari in domain battles, from what we know, he should probably never lose them. However, for Higuruma, the binding vow of his domain, with the sure hit of no violence, there's no time stated like it was with Hikari or Mahito's, but it is noticeable once the domain forms, whoever resides in it cannot attack Higuruma or anyone at all. The trial must commence no matter what. So after Higuruma and Sukuna have probably some of the most intense and chilling dialogue during this trial, Sukuna should have no curse technique and maybe even no curse energy, depending on how severe the death penalty will be. And Sukuna being in a non-lethal domain would also be pretty interesting, as he might reveal something about these domains that we might not know about. With the Executioner's Sword and Yuji's new badass blood claws, they will fight a rather handicapped to an extent Sukuna, even though he's still ridiculously powerful. But not to mention Sukuna's past crimes in the Heian era could be revealed in this as well. I'm praying it's not just Shibuya related, but his entire life, as this could be a way to kind of fully flesh out Sukuna's past a little bit as to what all he did that made him the disgraced one, that made him hated by all the people that were in that era. I think Higuruma's deadly sentence trial is going to provide some of the best character moments of all three involved. Yuji versus Higuruma is one of the best fights in post Shibuya and one of Yuji's deepest and best moments as a character overall. And Higuruma is a man who wants proper justice to prevail, and what better justice than to aid in the downfall of the King of Curses, the calamity that has hit all of Japan, before finally turning himself in. Now, the likelihood of Higuruma dying is also because, after all, we don't know if there's a time limit on how long a person will go with no curse technique until it's restored. We never really got that answer. But what if the goal isn't to miraculously beat Sukuna, but to provide an opening for Yuji's plan to save Megumi? What if, with death penalty activated, Yuji uses his presumed soul swapping ability to grab Megumi out of Sukuna somehow, while Sukuna doesn't have at least the curse technique to defend himself as much, such as like a dismantle slash towards Yuji? He would just have to dodge a couple punches here and there, and kind of revive Megumi to where he can at least fight back Sukuna from the inside and eventually kind of reincarnate himself outside of Sukuna. I don't know how to put it, as I do believe Megumi is going to be extremely crucial in putting down Sukuna once and for all, because I mean, having the 10 Shadows and Mahoraga as an ally to take down Sukuna feels like almost a must at this point, especially if Yuta and Maki are going to be tied up with, I'm presuming, Kenjaku. I think they could step in maybe after the domain, you know, when Sukuna is not at his strongest, to try to beat him. I mean, having Yuji, Maki, Yuta, and Higuruma there seems like a pretty good idea to go against a handicapped Sukuna, especially if Kenjaku doesn't jump in. If he does jump in, things are going to change very drastically. The hype for 239 is going to be unreal when the break is over. Something crazy to think about is Higuruma and Yuji are both in sorcerer years, at least the youngest out of everyone. Yuji's, who's been a sorcerer for about a good 6 months, I think, and Higuruma has been a sorcerer for barely a month. But it's time for the MC to step in and take care of business against the king.
How I got my shirts and fingers, got it loud in the street. Boy, it's wild.